Today I'm here to talk about one of my favourite TV shows of all time, one which was cancelled for being too lavish after only 2 seasons out of a planned 5, yet still managed to wrap everything up in style. A show which is turning 20 next year, and one which has sadly remained unknown to a large segment of TV viewers. I'm obviously talking about HBO's pioneering historical epic, Rome. Rome ran for 2 seasons between 2005 and 2007 and covers the tumultuous period of the middle of the 1st century BC. This was one of the most fascinating periods of Roman and indeed world history, and saw some of the most famous figures in history, such as Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, Pompey the Great, and Octavian Caesar battle it out for control of the most powerful nation in the world, Rome. As a kid, I was very into Roman history, and I first watched this show when I was 11. Yes, I know, my dad honestly didn't care about age ratings, and whilst I'm grateful for him for letting me watch this show at a young age, I probably won't let my own kids do so, if I ever have any, as this is certainly filled with quite a bit of graphic content. Anyway, since then I'd say I've watched the show countless times, to the point where I've basically memorized the entire script. It truly is a masterpiece, and laid the groundwork for one of my other favourite shows, HBO's Game of Thrones, although unlike Thrones, Rome managed to end successfully. So what makes Rome so great? Well, there's no denying the fact this show had a massive budget. It is a joint production between HBO and the BBC, and at the time of its release, it was the most expensive show ever made. While this may have led to its cancellation, it's fair to say the money was put to excellent use, unlike in many modern productions such as Rings of Power. They built a massive set just outside Rome, which truly looks incredible and makes the whole thing feel so much more authentic. That, along with the grittiness of the surroundings and the excellent costumes, make everything feel so realistic, as if you're truly watching the lives of the ancient Romans. From the stench of rotting fish, freshly made porridge and beer and wine, to the heat of the weather, the sweat everywhere, and the splendor of the Senate. Everything feels authentic, which was one of the showrunner's intentions. Another reason why this show was so excellent is the dialogue and acting. The conversations in this show are outstanding and feature some of the most epic quotes I've ever heard.
He sits alone in Ravenna with one mutinous skeleton of a legion, and he dares to dictate terms to me.
Caesar has many more legions than the 13th.
On the far side of the Alps.
Winter does not last forever. Spring comes, snows melt.
That's a threat.
I assure you it is no threat. Snows always melt.
Adding to the great writing, outstanding performances by the actors such as McKidd, Stevenson, Tobias Menzies, Ciarán Hinds, who is one of my favourite actors, and particularly James Purefoy, who did an outstanding job as the supremely arrogant and rude, yet strangely likeable and hilarious Mark Antony. These performances take the already excellent script and make it truly epic. The show also features a very nice soundtrack, to add to that, with some very memorable tunes. And one of the things I really appreciate about this show is the way it compares the lives of those at the bottom of society, such as the excellent characters of Lucius and Pullo, alongside the famous men at the top, and particularly the way they interact with each other. Whilst it's often sadly lost to history, I think we often fail to remember just how much of an important role that relatively ordinary people played in great historical events. The two worlds, the plebeian and aristocratic, interact far more than we might think, and through Pullo and Lucius, Rome does an excellent job of reminding us about the role the lower orders have played, not only in Rome but throughout history. Although not strictly historically accurate, one of my favourite scenes in the show is when Pullo discovers a large amount of gold, which Pompey's men had taken from the Roman treasury. Pompey's men had then mutinied and taken the gold for themselves, driving away and pretending to be merchants. Pullo and Caesar's other scouts find them, recognize them as soldiers, and kill them, but they don't bother to check inside the boxes. However, Pullo later returns to rescue a slave girl who is tied to the wagon, and in doing so stumbles upon the huge amount of gold inside. He then hurriedly frees the girl and slowly drives the wagon away. Meanwhile, just a few meters away, Caesar and his army are marching along the road. The great general glances over at the peasant trundling along in his wagon and pays him no more attention than he would a fly. It doesn't even enter into his mind that so much wealth from the Roman treasury could be right under his nose in the hands of such a man. He just glances over, sees a plebeian, and continues on oblivious.
I applaud you. You're about to enter Rome as a blood-stained conqueror, and yet you look as calm as a cup of water.
I'm glad I appear, son.
Whilst there's no evidence that such a situation ever happened, I think it's the perfect example of how this show perfectly explores the interactions between the rich and the poor. Now to summarise, HBO's Rome is one of the finest TV shows ever produced, and if you haven't seen it, then please do. I rate it 9 out of 10, it's outstanding.
Crackers! Something more cheerful.